This is Vibe Check with Zach and Kris.
And we are back for a second season.
We are back for a second season of Vibe Check with Zach and Kris. And as we promised the entire first season, we now have video footage everywhere.
And it's live on my Instagram. It's live on my Facebook, Vibe Check Facebook. We got Zoom.
I got it on the TikTok live.
And this is an absolute guarantee that we will have footage.
There will be
because
some
you're
kind
watching
of
it
footage.
live. You're watching it live. And by the way, why do we have Zoom, you might ask?
We have Zoom so that we could talk to some people if they want to come onto our Zoom. So if you go to our Facebook, you go to any of our, platforms, there's a Zoom link, and you can join the Zoom and ask us questions.
Yeah, that's the second hour.
That's pretty much, yeah.
Or
So-
whenever we want.
So we're going to start this picking up where we left off, which was introducing you to a spiritual ocean you might not be aware of, and finding ways to have it serve you and for ways for you to serve it.
That's right.
And Zach was pointing out to me, we had a little discussion before this to figure out what we were going to do for the show. And we were talking about how literacy in society has been boosted immensely because of the rise of technology and the need and constant use of reading, when we used to live in a culture where reading was kind of a side task. While now you have a phone in your hand that's constantly feeding you text.
You're reading all the time.
And you're reading all the time. So Zach, dive into that for us.
So how do we go from, well, we're digging deep into the spiritual ocean that we should all encounter at some point in our lives that will be both terrifying and beautiful and worthwhile to going into, to, okay, now we're going to talk about literacy. Well, the issue is that I don't know if anyone has noticed, but the world has changed very fast and very furiously. So whereas last year it was like the tide had moved back completely, like so deeply that we were all alone and literally stuck in our rooms and so on. It was like the way the tide moves back before a tsunami. And the tsunami that's coming into this world is a tsunami of light. It's a tsunami of connectedness and of togetherness. It's a new era, possibly a messianic one. I don't mean it in the religious sense. I mean it in the sense of now we're all together as one people.
Yeah.
Spiritually. And literacy is one of the engines that made this possible. Because when you have one generation, let's say Generation Z, who are all super literate, super smart, how did they get that way? Well, it used to be that reading, as you were saying, is an onerous task that you only have to do if someone forces you to do it. But now, with phones, that's what you're doing all the time. It's like, how many people just watch videos all the time? People are texting, people are writing. And eventually, they're going to find new words and find new people and find new ideas around the world. And suddenly, everybody is going to be able to imagine a new world. I mean, that's what Reading promised. That's what Reading Rainbow was.
Yeah.
Right? What was Reading Rainbow other than the promise of something different and better than what's going on? That's the ability to move out of the cynicism of the world's never going to change. I'm going to accept my fate. And when everybody has decided that they don't want to accept their fate anymore as a collective and as an individual, they can see that the whole world is connected, that there are different ideas, there are better societies that you can make. Like, oh, wow, I guess we could have Medicare for all. Oh, wow, I guess we could, pull out of wars. I guess we could have racial justice. I guess we could have all these things, instead of becoming inevitably nothing will change, become inevitably something must change.
Yeah.
And that wasn't because the situation had changed. It happened because people's minds had changed. And so the example I give about this whole thing is, for 100 years, Myanmar was ruled by a brutal military dictatorship. 10 years ago, they sort of had a half transition to democracy. A few months ago, they decided, no, we want power back.
Yeah.
And before then, people were like, oh yeah, we love the military. They're great. They ensure tranquility. They fight 100 different ethnic groups, and that's great. And now 30 some odd people are dying in the streets in Myanmar because they had grown up with the internet, with the whole world, with English, and they were like, no, we could do better than that. And by all accounts, the army was not expecting that pushback. And that's the flip that literacy makes. That's why literacy was always seen as a danger to authoritarianism. And so when we ask the question, how did we get there? I can really point to that, which is brought in by the chariot of technology. That's where we are. I mean, I would ask, how could it not be the case that we're reading all the time and we're going to start imagining new possibilities?
Well, I think even if we had less distracting material on the internet and more important, like informative material on the internet, the process of humanity's like unity and self-governance and ability to like communicate would have actually developed better. Yeah. But instead we've sort of fallen upon these applications and different things that kind of funnel the usefulness out of the technology.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say this, though. Like, you can kind of choose your experience on the internet.
Very true.
It's kind of a function of, like, where we are on an evolutionary scale.
Yeah.
You know, because we are going to... It's going to... As long as our lizard brain can be rewarded, someone's going to try to feed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
And so yeah, you could say like we're fighting against the commoditization of everything about ourselves. That we have like images to uphold and the rest of the world not to worry about and so on. But you know, just the collateral effects. So we do have to focus on the negative parts. That is important. And the negative parts are unrealistic expectations and pressures on everybody that I don't think people had to deal with in the past. Yeah.
No, and that's... I think we're in the middle of this shift in just how brain function is, because the technology is so new, humanity hasn't gotten used to... It's like a new drug. And eventually, I think humans will be able to, you know, separate what they need to, that they're digesting from the internet.
Right. And not just poison.
But yeah, but because it's such a new thing, your body, it's like a virus, yo. Yeah. Your body has to build antibodies so that it's like, no, I understand. This is how the internet is.
That's it. That's the analogy I was waiting for. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Because like, what else could it be?
Yeah.
Because every time a new media comes to life, people think that whoever's on it is their friendly neighbor. And it turns out, of course, everyone's trying to play to their advantage. Yeah. I mean, even now, bizarrely, like, you know, I go on Clubhouse. Apparently, with the new app where, like, it's... I don't know how to describe it. It's just a bunch of people who go into rooms, but they're all audio. And people take advantage of each other very fast, very easily, like that. Why? Because it's new.
Yeah.
So people need to build the antibodies. Yeah. People need to get screwed over enough times.
Exactly.
Before someone says enough.
Exactly. The same is happening with all the other applications that are, you know, being investigated and stuff like that. Like, there are toxic parts of that technology that wasn't seen beforehand, or at least maybe it was seen, but nobody cared. And now they're dealing with the consequences of it and trying to find a way to keep the technology around while making it not a danger to people's privacy and people's, you know, just taking advantage of people's time and their energy and making money off of it while they're just actually getting negative things from the application, like ads that are negative and ads that are targeted and algorithmically are trying to figure out what's going to drive you craziest. So you keep watching, you keep looking. Like clickbait. Clickbait is like the most dangerous thing, because it's like they'll give you the worst news topic and then they're making money off of it, and it's like, yo, that's toxic. Like, that's, you have any idea how, like what is it, like the Daily Dot? I'll see that come up on my Facebook or something, and I'm just like, why are you sharing that news story? It's a really sad, tragic story, and you're just making money off of it, and I don't appreciate that.
And what's going to happen is that the next stories you're going to see are even worse to catch your attention.
Yeah.
And you know, so what's interesting though is that just like COVID, where you have this sort like what's kind of happening is that the stakes are raised.
Yeah.
So everyone could die from this virus, or everyone could learn how to work together and be okay with who they are individually, and eventually and sort of work together in a cooperative way. That's a huge binary choice.
Yeah.
A bizarre one. Same really bizarre binary choice happens when you have, we could all work together and get to know each other and break boundaries and borders and actually speak to each other, versus let's collapse ourselves in our bubbles and make sure not to speak to anyone different than ourselves and radicalize ourselves further. And it's the exact same dichotomy, because when you look at things in a spiritual frame, you don't see differences in situations. You see commonalities in a pole, which is unity and division.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what God is. God is unity. The rest of everything is division. The goal we have is to bring unity into this world.
Yeah.
And so what are silos on the internet? What is like breaking ourselves down and being radicalized versus like the impending unity that can come from technology?
Yeah.
Other than the most baseline spiritual conflict between, am I just going to look out for myself, or is everyone else's interest also mine?
I just had a really intense thought, and I'm just going to bring it up because it'll be really good conversation.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I just got like philosophical visions. I was like, ooh, I want to talk about that.
That's what we're here for. That's what we do here.
The internet is pretty much just a projection of like human consciousness, right?
Yes, it is.
And that's all it is.
Yeah.
So we've purged so much of our toxicity onto the internet that maybe, just maybe, it's digesting it for us.
Yep.
And so we finally have a place, like, people use the internet like a diary.
Yeah.
When people didn't, some people would look down upon diaries and think that that's just a weird thing. Well, now you'll see people just post their basic emotions and they're feeling at the moment.
What does Facebook prompt us to do? What are you thinking today?
Yeah,
that's the literal prompt.
It's pretty much a diary. So we're feeding this technology all of our toxicness and all of that, and kind of giving ourselves a place to purge that. And you'll see some people use the internet to purge way more than they should. Because they're toxic in general and they need more help than just internet purging. But say we're finally sort of cleansing ourselves by putting it into the internet, and that's where I sort of see the danger of the internet. Because we're feeding the algorithms all the things that we like and the things that bring us pleasure, and a lot of the things that bring us pleasure are toxic. And so we're finally at this shift where people are finally able to, like, I feel like the internet gave people a place to organize their feelings and their thoughts, and they can finally visualize stuff, and they can visualize their creations, and it's easier to create things on the internet. So now there's finally like a technological canvas for people to express themselves, but people don't always express things healthily.
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, it permeates the universe, where the most positive version of using something and the most negative version of using something.
What's so nuts is to me about this idea is that you're seeing it as a process, as a mechanism for process of cleansing. And yeah, obviously, like some after effects of cleansing can be very toxic of the body, of the self, of anything. But this is what I wanted to transition to, which is that, you have all these you have this dichotomy between complete isolation and complete being wrapped up in your internet bubble, your thought bubbles, your toxic mind bubble, your literal physical space. And it's like we're being pushed to that wall, which makes us open to the other extreme.
Yeah.
And we were at this one wall last year, especially. I mean, it's hard to the mind does strange things where it makes certain memories just not exist.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to hit the other wall. And the other wall is, okay, now everyone's literate. Everyone's sort of on the same page about working together. Everyone has higher aspirations. Nobody is deciding, we need to go protest and fight the government because it's useless and this won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
They're all thinking, actually, with enough of us together, we can change things for the better. The cynicism has kind of gone out the window, even in the most cynical acts.
Yeah.
And so now we're dealing with a new era where this cleansing mechanism very much including the internet, very much including the diaries that we're writing, are letting open a flood of light.
Yeah.
So before last season even, it was all about the ocean of light we had to reach. Mm-hmm. Now we're being flooded by light.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, I feel, okay, going along with that, it's like the internet opened the floodgates for emotion to finally go somewhere where so many people were so repressed before the technology.
That's a big point for you, because you went often about repressed emotions as a part of society.
No, I think humanity's biggest weakness is that I think most of us want to please other people, and the only reason that they become where they stop caring about pleasing other people is when they have been screwed over enough times that they go to the other wall. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they hit the opposite mentality because they're like, well, this one's not paying off.
Yeah.
So we need somewhere to express ourselves, because the repression of the human mind is the most dangerous thing, because it's infinite.
Yeah.
The human mind can do things that no other being on this planet that we know of so far, that we've, confirmed, that's the word. Yeah. We have something that these other things don't, and it's the ability of imagination and bringing the imaginary world into the physical world. And when we can finally express ourselves in healthy ways, or at least find ways to express the different emotions that can, when repressed, show up as negative action, self-destructive behavior. Once we have enough good outlets for that, and that is actually what's publicly accepted and what is socially normal, like if like a health spa that had access to a bunch of different, this is an idea I came up with today, actually. It's like a health spa that had access to all the different things that make people relaxed, was regularly accessible to everyone, so that they can go somewhere to escape and just relax and express themselves healthily. If that was a publicly functioning thing, then humanity wouldn't be taking it out on each other, because that's what we do. Like, humans are just taking out pent up generational trauma and projecting it onto each other, not knowing that it's in the past and we just haven't let it go yet.
Yeah, I mean,
we're already in the future and we haven't let go the past, which is holding us back at this point. I mean, we have the tools we need now.
I think there's an argument, though, between whether you can just tell the past, we're ready to look at a bigger horizon.
Yeah.
And so let's process you, deal with you, and move on. Or no, there's a reason why the past keeps coming back. It's because it's not just we can look at better horizons and become better, but there's actually a processing within ourselves collectively and individually that requires us to always turn to the most negative aspects of ourselves so we can conquer it. Yeah. I was writing a blog post for my Turkish snack company. I didn't really finish it, but I was starting to get into we're called Toros from Taurus the bull. And Carl Jung wrote about Taurus, and I thought that was interesting. He said it represents the struggle. Any form of mythic bull represents the struggle of ourselves against our animal nature. And that the struggle is not only something important to conquer, but actually it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to always confront. And how can you confront without reaching rock bottom? The entire concept of the hero's journey is always reaching the most dark and dangerous places.
True.
Every single one of them. And so you could say, well, let's move on from the past now that we're in the future. Or you could say, like, actually, moving is not really something we are really capable of doing. We're only mostly capable of changing our shape to reflect the light and the darkness that's within us and around us.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it in a more specific way than that.
Let me do it, because I
think you're good.
Shadow work is one of my specialties.
Yeah, go at it.
The concept of digesting the negative aspects of yourself and your reality, and being able to like alchemically change within yourself to produce a product that serves you is like the most important thing that humans can learn. Like, when you go through the worst of the worst, if you don't learn from it, then that's failure. If you can learn from the things, like, say you have no control over these things, say it was just a really bad thing, but you had all these emotions, you have to learn how to digest them. Like, that emotional maturity, emotional evolution comes with the digestion of emotion, and the digestion of feelings, and understanding, like, the core of where that feeling comes from, but knowing that the core of that feeling is not the greater, higher you. It's a very low version of you.
Yeah.
The cores of your most primal emotions are so low vibrational and not really a part of you, even though you feel it. Obviously, you're just going to feel it in that moment.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to let it go. Otherwise, you're holding on to it, and then it starts to actually shift, sort of who your higher self is down into that emotion.
I think we're, so let's put this as a constellation of things. First of all, we have the inner shadow work, the going to the lowest point of our being to learn from it, and that being a necessary process in the evolution of the self. Then we move into the ability of society to confront the darkest parts of itself by collapsing into total isolation, which is the darkest of society, of like self improvement and social media and like nationalist and racist sorts of movements and all these sorts of things like that, and COVID, the physical isolation. All these go from an individual rock bottom to a communal one. And then we go to how can we confront this and learn from this and rise? Well, the same things that brought us into a complete collapse into the completely isolated self, technology, also gives us the same tools and abilities to imagine something greater and higher. And now we have gone from the confrontation with the most weak anxieties of the self and of the society, all confronted, all looked at right in the face in every single issue. The way we look at other people, the way we look at each other, like sexually, like all the Me Too stuff and all the new advanced consciousness of sexuality and gender, race, like international boundaries and borders, the way we look at the poor and people who are struggling, mental health,
the control of the money, like every power, the way it's concentrated, everything is being looked at directly in the face. Now, normally we're also looking at it in the face, but we're kind of running away from it. Yeah. For some reason, we all got collectively backed into a corner, so we had no choice but to look at it in the face. Yeah. And it was in this face is where this eternal and beautiful struggle was condensed and collapsed into a moment. That moment, that eternal moment, is the only moment where that true processing can happen, because it is both at the bottom that also the top is reached. Yeah. And so that's where I want to transition to after the break is, okay, now that we've seen death in the face, essentially, the memento mori, the struggle with Taurus, every bit of that we witnessed last year in the beginning of this one. What are the consequences? What is leadership in a new era where light is becoming more and more normal? Yeah, where we're fighting for what's right is overshadowing what's normal.
Yes. And it's not just fighting for what's right. It's what do we do when things are right?
Yeah.
Because boredom is actually the most dangerous enemy of humanity, if I would say. I would add that.
Idle hands.
Idle hands.
Yeah. Thing? Yeah. No, I completely understand that. If
Like,
the lack of, before we even shut down for the break, the lack of motivation and personal purpose is what causes the true demise of humanity and the true like failure to yourself, because once you finally get to a point where you just feel like nothing matters, you're a miracle. Your existence on this planet as the being that you are, going through the things you went through and still being alive at this moment, is a miracle of unfathomable probability. You shouldn't exist. We shouldn't exist. None of this should exist.
Yeah.
And if that itself doesn't prove there has to be meaning, if all of this complicated reality around us is what it is, then there has to be some sort of deep meaning behind it, or the structure wouldn't be so consistent.
And unless we find that meaning, all that work of going into that bottom, what will end up happening is like a spark will fly, but it will go back down.
Yeah.
We have to see the light that's above.
We want the firework to pop in the air. We don't want it to...
We have to see the light above for the spark to be attracted. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I'm just saying we have to keep going up.
Yeah.
And so just because here's the big struggle of the next 100 years. When things are going well, does that mean we become decadent? Or do we reach a higher purpose? And we're reaching a higher purpose now because we've seen disaster. Every generation that saw disaster could easily find a higher purpose. The higher purpose was preventing that disaster. But then when that disaster is prevented, what higher purpose is there next?
Yeah.
And that is the key question, I think, of that I want to explore with you for Vibe Check this whole season, actually. Because before we were just talking about the process of looking inside and finding the light for our own personal salvation in the moments of great personal darkness.
Yes.
But we need to find a communal light that keeps shining when everything seems bright and therefore nothing seems meaningful.
100%. I think being able to make it, I think adding our video segment and stuff that we're doing here is going to add to the community aspect of our show, which is what we're going to need moving on into the future. And I feel like we're finally at the time to do that. Not just us, but everybody else. Like, streaming is a very normal thing at this point. We all should be checking in with each other, and because we don't have ulterior, at least the majority of us, don't have ulterior motives for having our conversations with each other. We're just trying to express ourselves and get it out there, and if anyone attaches to it, awesome. We're not a news source. We're not trying to change your mindset so that it somehow feeds what we're trying to push, because literally all we're trying to push is that everybody work together.
I mean, I don't know what, like, I couldn't really pin down an agenda I have except for we genuinely need to express ourselves. And so, like, ideally, like, that's why I'm so grateful that in the second season we have a full array of ways to reach people, and hopefully people to reach us. And that we can work together on actually taking time with each other to uncover what is true and what is helpful and meaningful and beautiful in our lives.
So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back for part 2 of Vibe Check, Season 2, Episode 1.
This is Vibe Check with Zach and Kris.
And we are back. This is the second part of our episode. Normally, last season we were promising we would do 3 parts of an episode.
Yes.
And we might actually be able to do 3 parts of the episode.
Yes.
This time around, because we do actually have a guest on Zoom on the lines. Let's say that
We have a guest on the lines, and we might be able to get some questions if he stays on.
Yeah. But this is a not a warning, but it's a prompt to all of you that next week we might actually make a regular time for this. So if you have your questions, your comments, anything out there that you want to contribute, challenge, poke, whatever it is, clarify. That's what we're here for. But for now, let's go jump into the second part of the episode. What I think is that this show was meant to give people a boat to sail in the spiritual ocean.
Yes.
But we kind of miscalculated not the boat, not the need to build the boat, but where the ocean was. Because the ocean was somewhere last year that's not this year. It's somewhere completely different. At one point, the spiritual ocean was somewhere to escape to retreat to. Like, that's where you go after you die. That's where you go in the deepest parts of your dreams. Mm-hmm. Now the spiritual ocean is starting to leak into here, and it's starting to get flooded with light for the reasons we talked about in the time before. Mm-hmm. And that poses a challenge, too, because the spiritual ocean doesn't become less challenging once it's become more part of our immediate physical world.
No.
It just means it's more inevitable.
Yep.
Inevitable right in the moment.
Yeah.
So the question is then, what can we do to prepare people right now for the fact that the world is being flooded with light? What does that mean? So first of all, we might say that the world is being flooded with light, everything is going well, everything is going good. But the issue is that people, ironically, have very black and white thinking. They think when the Messiah comes, or apocalyptic times, or some sort of major important event, it goes from everything is horrible to everything is great and perfect, right as, snap of the finger. Mm-hmm. And that's not how life kind of works. It's a gradual transition and process. And what's going to happen is the same thing that's happened at every major disaster, followed by a renaissance in human history, which is the disaster happens, people react to it, rebound from it. They have the Roaring 20s, for instance. Mm-hmm. People just have a great time, and then people get so exuberant, but they don't know what to do next, and then the greed accumulates, power accumulates more than it should. After a bunch of reforms or beautiful things happen, like back then it was the progressive era in America, and then everything falls apart even worse than before. The Great Depression, and so we have this thing of of hardship, beauty, and then nobody knows where to go, and that's a problem, because it's great that we reached rock bottom, which we did last year. It's great that we're rebounding and seeing the world in a deeper way with new perspectives, and that the ocean of light is coming here. It's not as though God's voice has suddenly come to earth and told us exactly what to do at all times and orders us around. Mm-hmm. We have to do that work ourselves. So right now, there are all these people talking about, okay, what do we do with the given situations we're in? For example, with COVID, people are like, let's figure out how to do vaccine distribution. Let's figure out how to do online learning correctly. Elon Musk is like, let's go to the moon. Everyone sees a problem. He sees the problem being we're not on the moon, for instance.
Why aren't we on Mars and the moon right now? What's this virus about when we could be on Mars and the moon?
No, I mean, he sees the problem 100 years in the future, which is that we might not have an Earth, so he's just trying to be an advanced scout. But the point is that everybody is doing amazing things, but they're all doing one thing in common, which is they're reacting to the problem.
Yeah.
But what happens when you solve the problem? Do you just enjoy the excesses of success and fall backwards? Or do you keep going somewhere higher and ensure something good happens? And in my mind, what we need to start doing is, instead of thinking just reactively to the many problems we have, I assure you, there are many minds greater than all of ours put together dealing with all the actual problems of this world.
Yeah.
We need to spend our lowly existence, in contrast to that, taking up the space to think of what should we do if the problems get solved.
Yeah.
Because not having a solution, not having a vision, not having imagination for that is as big of a problem as all the other problems that people are solving.
Yeah.
Because what is it about boredom and idle hands?
That idle hands are the devil's plaything?
Yeah, that's the... Sorry, I was confusing it with like Devil's Workshop or something.
It's... If you're not doing anything with your body, someone's gonna do something else with it.
Yeah.
If you're not doing anything productive with yourself, your body's still gonna do something to pass the time.
Right. And so we're moving from a point where arts and culture, which were previously not respected, in fact, just seen as a way to be dead end in all senses of it, and you go do something productive. Well, the people who do something productive there might be a fair amount of them, and they're great and all that, but it turns out that a lot of the angry people, had they studied more culture and liberal arts and that sort of thing, had they had a meaning, had they had any sort of deeper meaning, they would not have glommed on to the first thing that fed their most neurotic desires.
Yeah.
And so arts and culture are actually the very vehicles that can bring people, once we solve a certain amount of technological challenges, now we have to solve challenges of meaning.
Yeah.
Because that's where the void will inevitably be after we solve problems. And so what's the priority? Now the priority is arts and culture. Like, you have Cartoon Reality Studios. I have a bizarre variety of different things. We have Vibe Check together. What do they exist for? Yeah, we can say Vibe Check exists to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Building a boat. But let's be honest. We're not really just trying to solve a problem.
No.
We're creating something for the sake of creation.
Yeah.
To a better place. We don't know where that is.
We're using what we're given and what we feel like we know to create something we feel could be useful, but regardless of whether it's useful or not, it's useful to us.
Exactly. It might not even be useful. It's just healing. I feel healed when I come here. Like, I really, really do. And like, so when you have no utility around something so incredibly valuable in the way society is supposed to value something, nobody's going to think, well, that's something we should invest in and cultivate in.
Yeah.
This is an enterprise of volunteerism. It's not an enterprise of profit. And that's fine. But that economics of things just has to do with what people value at the moment. But what people are gonna need to value in the future is creation and imagination. Yeah. Something new, something beautiful. Because if we start running out of those things, people will start becoming bored and creating problems for each other, and then we'll start becoming cynical of each other again, and then we'll start going back into our holes again, and then we're gonna go right into the face of terror that we had just encountered.
That's another thing, just about like really addressing being progressive and being productive, because if you're not being productive, you're gonna find ways to, like, passive aggressive ways to release that energy. Yes. And you might not be consciously aware of it, but it's gonna go somewhere, and usually it's just projected onto the people around you, and that's what creates the problems that could be solved by focusing on your own productivity, your own growth, and your own, like, servitude to the greater good of everything around you.
Right, and this servitude of the greater good and art imagination, the beautiful thing about a moment of great renaissance and beauty is that it's not that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just first go and accept that these are positive things, all you have to... I've noticed that there's a transition from last year to this year. Last year, we had spiritual experiences, but they were... in my mind, the deja vu, the dreams, whatever they might be, that was delving into the spiritual world was also a delving right into the encounter of the darkness itself. Yeah. Like, there was a lot of disharmonious things necessary. The hero's journey is necessary. Yeah. That's why it is. But necessary is nice. Necessary is important. But it's not what we're ultimately striving for. It's not. But now, every sort of spiritual thing that's happening, every bit of growth no longer has a taste of poison in the back of its mouth. Now it's like the honey is just dripping on all the beautiful things that are flowing into our subconscious minds. And we could simply enjoy that moment, or we can remember that the perpetual problem that we're going to face requires not just enjoying a moment of peace,
Yes.
but harnessing it as power to bring us collectively higher, only through the harnessing of pure forms, pure art, pure imagination, and manifesting it into reality. Yeah. That's what we have. That's what we have to do. That's what we're ultimately meant to do. And if we don't do that, we collapse.
We were talking about catching the winds of change are upon us.
Yeah.
And we all have to cast our sails and figure out where those winds are blowing and adjust ourselves and move forward. And some people have never set sail, and a lot of people don't want to go sailing.
Right.
A lot of people didn't
Right.
want. Some people don't like the beach, let alone the ocean.
Yeah.
So, metaphorically
used to it.
speaking, I'm
Yeah.
talking, of
Right.
course, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. So we're just at a point where we're forced to make linear change, in an unstable reality.
Yeah.
Because the reality, as much as we want to feel safe and secure and normal, we've obviously realized from what we've gone through, even just in the last year, that things shift in the craziest ways, in uncontrollable ways that you don't even want to believe how bad things can be, and then they show their ugly head and you're like, wow, that was there the whole time and I didn't realize it.
But once it comes, you do know. You're like, yeah, of course it was there.
You're like, well, yeah, I knew it was there, but I forgot it was there. And that's the point. You can't, I have expressed this before, you can't fall into contentment just because things aren't bad. You have to appreciate what's good that you have, and when it's really good, you really need to appreciate it, but you can't forget that you're surfing.
Yeah, I mean, right.
You're surfing on a wave, and you have to focus and get as far as you can before you fall off that wave. And if all of us are really concentrated on what we're trying to achieve, then it's a less tedious journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, this comes down to, let's not think about the present moment. Let's use the present moment to think about what we should be thinking about 15, 20, 100, 1,000 years from now.
Yep.
Which are, okay, we can't be a reactive species forever. We have to actually pursue a higher form by our own free will and volition, and not because we're simply forced to confront our deep, dark selves that we keep running away from over and over and over and over again. And we're here to advocate for imagination and culture and art and spirituality, because look, it's not going to be a perfect battle. If we all win and collectively decide imagination, art, and selflessness will rule the day, it's not as though things are going to be perfect. I mean, we still have some obvious challenges that I don't think we're going to be completely dealt with by any stretch of the imagination.
This is a specifically imperfect reality.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that, but also not accept it, because
Exactly.
our true form of spirit comes from an infinite possibility. It comes and stems from an infinite source of, well, this could be, and it shall be, because there's a being here and it's thinking it, and then it does it, and it's like, whoa. There's something really magical about the basic principles of the human existence.
Yeah, and we can't dismiss, and my final point on this issue is we're no longer in the position to dismiss the ability to realize and actualize the artistic and intellectual and higher forms of the self. We no longer have the luxury to say that these are frivolities of a happier time. They're the necessities that guarantee a better future, and it's only because meaning is not something that can be generated because we want it to be there.
Yeah,
That's where the actual genuine work comes.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to touch on talking about the future.
Yeah.
And being in a mindset to combat problems of the future instead of being self-serving and only worrying about your present generation or present family bloodline. You got to look at it like time travel.
Yeah.
You got to look at it like your higher self, your higher spiritual self, whatever you want to call it or understand it as, is the future human race. It's a version of you from the future human race looking back like in time through your eyes and going, do something. You know what I mean? And that's like a hidden driving force of a progressive human is thinking like, no, that like it's got to get better. Like I can't stay in this moment right now, even though this moment might be cool or this moment is not painful. I still need to get to a different moment, and it feels like the moment keeps repeating itself. You know, when you get stuck in a state of feeling like you're stuck in a singular moment, when we're literally trapped in linear time, that's real.
Can you read what's on your shirt for a second for the audience?
My shirt says "Love is a ghost."
Love is a ghost. Love. When people get motivated to do something, it stems from one of two things. It comes from hatred and anger of all the things that have hurt in the past, and I think everyone has to start there. I mean, I don't know how else you start yourself up.
Yeah.
But eventually, it transitions into love. It transitions into like a feeling of love that penetrates the entire being to get yourself to do something every day. And so eventually when we're all filled with that spirit of love of the beautiful things of this world, like for me, it's the beautiful radios. I love listening to my shortwave, my little walkie-talkie, my CV, whatever. Like just being cast adrift into love of the beautiful things of this world. That's eventually going to be, in the Christian sense of it, that love of beauty, of art, of just the pure being and existence, that love is going to be our salvation. Because it's a salvation that leads us not into peace, but to infinite action.
To unconditional and uninhibited growth. Uninhibited growth.
Exactly.
Because if you have that endless compassion, that endless love of creation.
Yes, that's it.
It's the love of creation is really where you're attaching the source. Because that's the most powerful thing that is imposed upon this reality, especially even just by us, let alone maybe spiritual beings and stuff. But the aspect of creation is what gives us our power, whether it's organically with childbirth or just artistically or engineering and architecture and science and just things that we have worked out as beings that literally stem from originally your mind comes from nowhere, like every human being comes here as like a blank slate, and then we're all just these paintings that are painted by environment and by the nurturing of the nature and the nurture of the human experience and the environment presented to them. And then we all have our beautiful like uniqueness to ourselves, but we have to be able to look at that painting and accept it. Some people don't like the painting. Some people look at a piece of art and they're like, that's trash. And it's like, but that's you.
Yeah.
So you have to you got to find the beauty in the art, regardless of whether it's your own personal art piece or someone else as an individual.
Think of it this way. Everything that everyone loves, someone else really will not. Like, let's say I love architecture.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get you into my hobby, and you're like, well, this is boring, or I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
If you put enough love into that person,
Mm-hmm.
you will also put love into what they love too. And that is how harnessing the winds of light will give us the constant motivation and energy to learn something new. And in that constant learning and growing and creating and expressing, that will create a process of constantly moving forward, propelled by love. That's where love can get us. Love will not get us inwards into a small place with one person. Love will expand us into the entire universe around us, because everything can be examined, understood, breathed in, felt, spiritually experienced by motivation. And the motivation should be only the thing itself. And what else could that motivation be of the thing itself than love?
Yeah.
Of God's world, of our world, and of ourselves, and everything about that. The ability to walk into a house, your own house, and see it new each and every time. People talk about gratitude exercises. What are gratitude exercises? Gratitude exercises are the challenging yourself to see something beautiful in what you hadn't seen as before. Gratitude is work, because you're not working on being more grateful.
Yeah.
You're working on being more, on motivating yourself to be more observant.
Yeah.
You're working on motivating yourself to break a barrier of something you didn't understand, so you can understand the internal harmonies that will give you joy and motivation in and of itself to keep looking and keep looking and keep looking and keep looking.
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately what we're aiming for. That's how we go from being reactive to a moment of crisis into a moment of truth, into being leaders of a new world. Your decision to love the world will make you a leader of it. And it's not necessarily good to be a leader for the sake of being a leader.
Yeah.
You need to be a leader, because without you being a leader, we will have no leaders.
Facts. It's true.
There are so many people in this world, and they need leadership. And that leadership doesn't mean I'm going to tell you what to do and you have to be interested in my hobby, my nationality, my life. I'm going to demonstrate interest in those things so that you will be inspired to demonstrate interest in the things that you love.
Like what you were saying earlier, where if you put the love into what someone else is interested in, you will get more out of it. You will get what you wanted out of it, because in turn, that person who understands it more than you do will provide their own understanding to you so that you can actually appreciate and love it as much as they do. But you have to be willing to put in the energy to absorb the other person's knowledge, the other person's experience, the other person's love of that specific thing.
And I'll give an example of just something I remember going through with you on this subject. Like often when people think about like wrestling and WWE, they don't think, oh wow, like there must be some interesting, intricate art there. It's like you just think it's entertainment. I'm gonna look down on it, whatever. Well, when you were showing me WWE Raw, which I used to love in my childhood, and you showed it to me, like there is a message that is being sent. There is a symbolism to all these stories. And of course, if you actually look at the Bible, you look at history, you understand that wrestling is not merely a sport, but a demonstration of our collective psyche.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, I was able to be, at first, my motivation to watch that was because of you.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then, because I could listen to you, I could listen to truth.
Yeah.
I could listen to truth that you had seen.
Yeah.
And that's why you were so motivated to tell me, because you wanted to express truth and love.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I had a Yom Kippur sermon out of it. That was some utility, but even more than that, what I had was was the ability to find truth and beauty in a place I just hadn't thought of before.
Well, the fact that you bring that up is amazing, because it's like wrestling in itself on the surface, it's planned storylines, and the titles go to the chosen by the company.
Mm-hmm.
But not on the surface, it's this honest battle of athletes with developed characters and personas that they have to take on, with energies they have to project and feed off of, because when there was at least live crowds, you had energy, like the crowd would project super negative or super positive energy on you, or do chants that would try to throw you off.
Which brought me back to in college when I took philosophy of sport. That's how philosophy got into sport.
Yeah.
Not because of the athletes, but because of the people watching.
Yeah. And so, and there's these genuine human beings behind it that have put their time and effort and life into these characters. And when they actually are moving up and are starting to get the belts, it's like, they proved themselves in the company. Like, they worked to get there, regardless of whether they were put there on purpose, like they earned it.
Yeah.
They usually earn it. It's not usually just hey, let's just give it to that guy. It's more like, you worked your butt off in the company.
There is a story. There's a real storyline of human beings who get worked into the storyline of this collective psyche, and so these two storylines merge together, and so you might be reading a storyline, but you might not be seeing that there is an actual deep human drama even between
sometimes it's literally two people talking real smack to each other because they know each other that well, because they work with each other, and you'll see when they're talking truth, and if it literally like hurts them, sometimes you'll see it in their eyes. They're just like, that you actually just hit me with words and I'm mad now. Like, I'm mad. That really triggered me. Now let's fight.
Yeah. so acting is... the truth is that acting is not and this is what makes acting an art. Acting is not a simulation of reality. It's a synthesis of reality. It's the moving of a storyline and a script with real human emotions.
It's even beyond acting, just into art.
Yeah.
Like, art is not just the artwork, it's the artist. If you understand the artist better, you're going to understand the artwork better.
That's right.
You're going to have a better understanding, a better, like, when you know what the song's about, when you know what the painting's about, when you actually get to hear the original expression of what that was supposed to mean to them, and then mix it into what it makes you feel like, and then...
Right.
And that's
the last element. You have to mix it into what you feel.
You mix it into what you feel, but you have to address that it's a different person with a different person, and that's why wrestling's so complicated. And that's like it's more complicated than people say, because it's like, that top character dynamic that you were attaching to, that's all ego. Like, you're 100%. The reason you don't like that character is because of your ego and because of what you don't like that they project. Things that you disagree with that they do.
So when we were talking about that face that you confront in your darkest moments, like when you confront athletes who represent an element of some sort of thing, like wealthiness or power or whatever it is, like, you have the chance to look at that character in the face. And even though you'll see maybe that character who represents wealth is going to be overtaken, and you'll feel good about that or bad about that if they win or lose, depending... How you feel about that character still does depend on a very internal reaction that you're having.
It's a personal ego thing. Just like say the champion is this big burly guy who's super brutal and just beats everyone down, and you love that character. Why? Because deep down inside you have like a power issue. Like, you have a power fetish in your mind where you just like, no, you should dominate, and being the most dominant is something that I want. I wish I had that. It's a projection of, man, I wish I could be that guy.
Yeah.
Or say the champion is actually someone who's more respectable and actually trying to be like the face character and trying to just be a good example. And there's so many people standing behind that. Why? Because you like that projection. You like that character. And that even goes to, like, I always relate wrestling to, like, politics. Why did people choose Biden over Trump? Why did people choose Trump over Biden? Was it necessarily their policies, their political policies that they were standing on?
I'm not sure
Maybe
people knew
not.
the difference.
I think a lot of people were voting on their face characters that they were presenting, and they didn't like what one side was projecting, and they didn't connect to that, so they chose the other side. And the same as the other. Like, Trump supporters think Biden's like a wussy, and he's just super liberal, and he's going to destroy the country. So they're projecting their like of Trump being nationalist and being kind of thick-headed and bullish, and they like that, and that's something they would project, so they choose that character to support. It's the same as wrestling. It's psychological. It's super deep. Like,
so
it's super meta, and it's so basic.
You know, the meta point about this meta discussion of wrestling and political characters and collective psyche is that truth is only pursued. Good truth, real truth, powerful truth is only pursued through love. And you can become self-reflective of your experience in art and politics and character when you start seeing the people no longer as projections but as human beings. That moment of connection and love between someone who had previously been a character allows you a moment of truth and peace to see the character as character and a character within yourself as character, as opposed to you as you and them as them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it takes away the shell from both you and them.
When you can truly face God is to face everyone as yourself.
Yeah.
That's the true unity necessity that we're approaching, is that we need to face each other as ourselves, literally as the other person is me and I am them, and I need to convince them that their brain isn't working right, and you need to be able to go through the conversation until both of you just got smarter, and all of a sudden you're on a closer level to each other.
When you start getting more sophisticated, maybe not smarter, but definitely wiser.
Yeah.
Wisdom sees past characters. Characters are very flat. They're necessary because they are reflections of certain aspects of ourselves.
Yes.
But when we go past the point of seeing an aspect to seeing the true reality.
Yeah.
You know, that's the ultimate, that experience that you have at one point, at one time, at one moment with someone you love, or someone you not necessarily love. Maybe just like just a moment of someone you just see eye to eye to. Maybe a stranger on the train you're riding.
Yeah.
Like, you just look at them and you're like, that's a human being, I'm a human being, we feel human together. That's fuel and motivation to have those moments over and over and over again. They're not moments that are necessarily prized in ventures that propel our economy and propel like what it means to have our livelihood. But it is going to be what propels us to have a future. And that's what I want to cultivate in this season. You know, and that's what it means to build our boat in a tide of light. It doesn't mean we're over. We can drown in this light. We can watch the light dry up and be stuck in darkness and now really not know what to do. Or we could take advantage of what we have and just become what the moment demands of us. That's what I would say to that.
Season 2 demands that we take the boat and instead we build an ark. And that ark's going to be lifted into a funnel of light as the light rains down upon us until we reach where we really need to be, which is somewhere better.
Somewhere better, and somewhere where we're encouraging people to become leaders in this new environment as opposed to reactors.
All right. So with that, we're going to end episode 1 of season 2 of Vibe Check with Zach and Kris, and we hope that we can provide a new year, a new vibe, a new
check
for you to check into every week.
Yeah, we're aiming on having this being a weekly thing, going back fully running, live streaming, Zoom calling, the whole thing. Every day is an experiment. Every time we do it is an experiment. Sometimes our experiments are running jokes, but that doesn't mean we aren't honestly working on it all, and we hope to come out with a regular time for you soon, as well as everything else.
And we will be posting that and seeing you next week. This has been Vibe Check with Zach and Kris. Thank you for listening.
This is Vibe Check with Zach and Kris.